Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage we're rebuilding a brake caliper. I'm doing this on 1996 Jaguar Xk8, but the principle is much the same for all single-sided calipers. Well, I treated us to a complete caliper service kit from British Parts, and it contains a bag of lube, a little sachet of lube, the guide pin rubbers, which have got very hard and start to be eaten by corrosion on the originals, the accompanying end caps which cover over the end of the slide pillars and stop anything dirty getting in there. We have the new seal that stops dirt getting down the sides of the piston, and the actual piston seal, which is what gives it the hydraulic seal in the cylinder, and that will actually go into a groove in the caliper. This groove is for the seal, and the final part is a brand new bleed nipple complete with its rubber cap. I'll pop that straight in the hole because it looked pretty. Before any rebuild can take place, there are two grooves you've got to ensure are clean. Now is obviously you've got to clean out this. This is the channel in which your seal goes for your piston to your cylinder, and that's the bit that makes the brakes work effectively, so that's got to be really clean. But there's an extra slot here, and this is very often clogged up, and is the reason why so many Xk8s and XKRs boots, rubber boot seals, whatever you want to call it, these are not installed correctly, and that's because that part of the section of the seal is supposed to go into this groove, and on most cars that's blocked up because the brakes have been played with by mechanics who don't care that much or didn't know that it was there, can't see how this is supposed to fit, and don't bother. Once it gets something in it, debris, then it's never going to fit, so you need to clean that out. Wanted you to see the new versus old on the pistons. This is all cleaned up and dry now. You can see the scuff marks where this is basically the action of the piston against the seal, and dirt and rubbish that's got in there has started to tear up the surface. So serviceable but not good. And down the bottom, fighting the light, there's a ring here. That's where it's cocked over inside the piston, inside the cylinder, sorry, and started to rub. You can see that there. Nice new piston, none of those issues. So our first job, here's our seal. And to aid its fitment and in its installation into the cylinder, we're just lubing it with a little bit of brake fluid. Very clean brake fluid, and damp it all down. And I cover all the surfaces. Remember, there's 4 sides to this square ring in effect. And then this is going into the groove inside our caliper. and your top priority is to make sure that it's got no twist or kink in it and it's sitting nice and flat. Next, having cleaned this up to perfection, a bit more brake fluid. Brake fluid is a good lubricant. It's not the best thing for your fingers, so I don't recommend. You should be wearing gloves really. So, what you want to do is install your seal first. Make sure you've got plenty of lube, whoops, plenty of lube on that little flange. It's got to go in that slot. You also want to put some lube on the inside edge, because you're going to have to push the piston in through it. Then what we're going to do is fit our seal before we fit our piston, and that's how you get these things right. Nothing difficult hard about this, it's difficult patience, because it's soft and it keeps jumping out. But make sure you've got that seated, and then everything else will be really easy. There we go. So the seal, gaiter if you like, is in place, and the piston seal is in place too. Then I'm just lubing the piston with a little bit of brake fluid. Part the bottom with your fingers. Push down with the piston to hold it into place. Then work the rest of it around until you know you have it pulled all the way round the piston without pulling the gaiter completely out of its seal again. And so it takes a little bit of patience. There we go. Let's see what I've managed to do there. We're well and truly into this seal properly, but we've got that all the way around the piston now. So now we know when we fit it, it's going to stay in position, because the piston stops this from jumping out of its groove. There we go. It's just a case of wriggling this piston now until it's square, and it should glide in like so, and it's dropped straight into its little groove. There we go. All good. So fitting the new guide rubbers can be a bit troublesome. So these things here, because they've got to go through that eye. They are shouldered both sides, and it is a very tight fit. So the right technique, or the technique I use anyway, a little bit of your assembly lube that comes with your rebuild kit on the long tapered end of the rubber. Let's get that off my glove. Next, fit that onto a screwdriver with a nice shoulder. Then from the underneath, insert your rubber. You're still going to have a little battle to get it all to go in to start. But once you're in to the eye on the casting, you can use the screwdriver to pull the thing in to position. Again, you're going to have to do a bit by hand probably at the end, but it makes it a lot easier. There we go. So you can get that out, because the toughest bit, the shoulder, is now in place. And push the last bit home. Get a good pull on that end. Cap on. You're done. Next, we're going to fit one of our lovely EBC brake lines to our caliper. And the critical thing here is cleanliness. So despite the fact I've kept these clean, we're going to just make sure that the point, the cone on the end of the brake line is nice and clean, and this end the same. I've had a little bit of brake fluid to the end here because it makes a bit of lubrication. Okay, so it's the shorter end that goes into the caliper. You've got a long end with a cone on, that's easy to see, and you've got the shorter end with a bit of a chamfer, and that goes into your caliper. And I've screwed it all the way in just by hand, and I know that it pulls up short and leaves a gap between the shoulder and the flare, the casting, when it's nipped up. So I'm going to put one of the supplied copper washers in place, and as long as I can just get that to nip, I know I'm quite tight on that flare at the bottom. That's where it's doing the sealing, not here. That is really just a visual indicator for me of how far I've gone up, because that's a little bit thinner than the gap when I nipped it up. So let's screw that in. Okay, so you see that is loose. .13mm spanner. Whoops. And what that's doing is telling me that I'm definitely hard up against the chamfer in the bottom, and I'm not pulling up hard against the casting. There we go. Firm, but not excessive. And again, still, I mean, it would be easy enough to see on these, to be fair, because there's a gap. But if you're unsure, put a little bit thinner washer in so that you know that it is not pulled up on the casting, it is pulled up on the seat. That's in. Bleed nipple is already in place, 9mm. Just nipping that up, and it's got his little cap on to keep the dust and rubbish from getting in. At this stage, taking the little caps off the sleeves, and we collect our two pillars, which have evidently been replaced because they're in beautiful condition. So these are getting reused. Give them a clean up. So somebody's done a bit of a half job on the calipers, keeping, maybe they were sticking and they've replaced a few components in the past. And on these sleeves, these pillars, sorry, we're applying a little bit more of the red assembly grease that is supplied with the caliper rebuild kit that you get from British Cars, or British Parts I should say, not British Car Parts. That's a different company. Equally useful I would imagine, but I don't know. So a little bit assembly grease on there. And these things are going to go through these pillars. So you can put them in whilst they're on the car, or you can put them in now. I'm choosing to put them in now because when I'm moving it around on the car, clean as I am, you're likely to collect a lot more dirt and get it on your hands and therefore get it on the pillars. On the bench, things stay a little cleaner. So popping them in here is better practice. They are quite tight. And there we go. And I've just pushed them through so that you can see the tip.